This
Julie.
conference will now be recorded.
I don't know if I'm the chairman or not. I'm listed as a member, and Gloria is the alternate. If Gloria wants to chair the meeting, that's fine with me.
No, I think, isn't Don the chair, Patrick?
Yeah, Don is the chair. When this was posted, Don, you're still a member, but on Tuesday became the chair. But the meeting notice had already been posted. But you're officially the chair of this meeting.
And who's the member, Pat?
The member is Desi Alvarez, and the alternate is Gloria Gray.
Okay, great.
Desi's on board, right?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's
can you
time
guys
to call
hear
to
me?
order.
Excuse me. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Who is that?
That was Director Alvarez asking, I believe, if the meeting was being videotaped. If I could hear, and the answer is yes. Okay, so it's yours to start, Don.
Okay, well, it's 11:33. I'll call this meeting to order of the Finance and Administrative Committee. And we note the presence of a quorum. Is there any public comment?
Good morning, Chairman Deere, members of the committee, board, public, and we have some guests from our consultants. We have no public comment today.
Okay, good. Presentations?
We have none, Chairman Deere.
On the action calendar, we have minutes of November 2nd and November 23rd board meetings.
Correct. We have, I'll just handle that. First action item we have out of 5 action items is the approval of the minutes. And so the recommendation is that the board approves the November 2nd, 2020 special board meeting minutes and the November 23rd, 2020 regular board meeting minutes.
Desi, what's your pleasure? Do you agree to approve them?
I was not at those meetings, so I'll need to abstain.
All right. Well, can Gloria vote in this matter?
Yes.
All right, well, I approve that they move forward to the regular board meeting.
Good, they'll do that then. Let's go on to 5B.
Okay, thank you. 5B pertains to our what we call our agenda management system and the license for that, which is up for renewal. This software is instrumental in preparing these packets that you see for each and every board and committee meeting. And we have our IT supervisor, Isaiah Suarez, on the line. Isaiah? Where is Isaiah? Oh, isn't that our IT supervisor is having a problem logging on? So hold on just a second. But I can tell you from this particular item, the original Acela was bought out by Granicus for the agenda management system, and this is what like I said, this is what staff uses to track and record all of the committee and board items. And as Isaiah, there you are. Isaiah, we're on item 5B. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I was just making a little joke at your expense there. The IT supervisor had a problem logging on. Okay, so I just started to introduce the item 5B, but for the agenda management system license renewal. So if you'd care to fill in the rest of why we need this and why we're asking for it to be renewed.
Yes. Good morning, Chairman Deere and the members of the committee and board. For this item, the agenda management system license renewal on page 17, the overview summary is currently we are engaged in a 1-year contract with the agenda for our agenda management system with Granicus. Currently, we've been using Minitrack since the year 2017. And we just recently implemented Civic Streaming, which allows us to post our board meetings to the website. And it also gives us the capabilities to live stream and stream to other locations if we choose. Excuse me. So the overall background, we have been using the system since 2017. It has been our backbone for the agenda management system. and it has we have been expanding the usage of it. Excuse me. And on the sorry.
Isaiah, can you still hear us?
Yes, I'm adjusting my page right here. I apologize for a second. So as continuing as a background, this Minitrack system is a cloud-based solution. It is hosted in the cloud by the vendor Granicus. We have been using with years of experience, this Agenda Master System staff has really seen the benefit, and we have really been expanding our usage of this system. The initial license for the Granicus system did increase from last year to a total of 242 and 61 cents. And this was to include the added amount of 27,000 to incorporate the Civic streaming add-on. And at this time, I'll read the recommendation. The recommendation is that the board authorizes the general manager to amend purchase order 12,500 for a renewal of the agenda management system license with Granicus for $57,242.61 for a not to exceed amount of $188,365.25 for a period of 1 year beginning December 30th, 2020 and ending December 31st, 2021. This concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there no questions? If not, Desi, do you agree to send it over to the board?
I move that this be moved forward.
Okay, we'll do that then. Fine. Thank you. Let's go on to item C.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Deere. Item 5C, we have in our code, we have a records management program that essentially manages all of our records to make sure we keep you the required records for the required time and that they're stored safely, everything from electronic to hard copy. Part of that is we have been developing a records retention schedule that spells out the details of what is being kept, how it's being kept, and how long it will be kept per the rules. So this is, we have Dwight Bajek. Good morning, Dwight. Dwight is our records management coordinator. And this is on packet page 19, by the way, of your packet page 19. And this item will be require board approval, and Dwight will walk us through it. Dwight?
Thank you, Patrick. Good morning, Chairman Deere, members of the committee, and members of the board. If you would turn to page 19 in your agenda packet, I will present the item on the records retention schedule. West Basin Municipal Water District has developed a records management program to more effectively manage and safeguard records created and received by the district, and provides the systematic control of all its records, regardless of format or location, throughout the life cycle of all district records. Per Administrative Code Section 7-1.1, Records Management Program. This revised policy was approved by the board on March 2017. One critical component of the program is the records retention schedule, which is shown in attachment A on page 21 of your agenda packet. This detailed schedule serves as the foundation for establishing the period and time required to maintain each distinct district record type. This schedule will include all district records in all formats, whether it's hard copy, electronic, photographic, etc., in accordance with the regulations for the retention and destruction of district records. The proposed schedule will ensure that vital, confidential, and historical records are identified, protected, and processed in accordance with established record-keeping procedures. This schedule also ensures that records received and created by the district are maintained in support of its operations. And lastly, records that have met assigned retention periods will be processed for destruction in accordance with the district's records management policy. The retention periods were established based on department needs, industry best practice, and legal research of applicable government record-keeping requirements. And this schedule has also been reviewed by the district's legal counsel. At this time, I will read the recommendation. The recommendation is that the board approve the 2020 records retention schedule and authorize the general manager to implement the 2020 records retention schedule. That concludes my report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions from the board at this time.
Press 1 if it's okay to send a text to your phone now. Otherwise, press pound. We've sent you a text message. You should get it within a few seconds.
All right, are there any questions?
No questions. I'll move this.
All right, I'll second it, and we'll move it to the board. Thank you, Desi. We'll go on to item 5D.
Okay, our next item is item 5D, and we've had security services for the Donald LD building and for special events for 5 years, contract ending at the end of this month. Staff issued RFP, and this item is to show you the results of the successful bidder for these services. I'll ask Julie Fraser Matthews to quickly cover this item for us.
Good morning, Chairman Deere, members of the committee and board. If you would turn to page 37 in your agenda packet, I'd like to present the item on the security guard services. I'll give you a few seconds to get there. West Basin Municipal Water District contracts for security guard services at its Donald L. Deere building. And West Basin first conducted a solicitation for proposals for security guard services in 2016. In April of that year of 2016, the board approved our current provider with a 2-year contract, a professional service agreement. And then in May of 2018, the board amended that professional service agreement to reflect a 2.5-year extension. The current professional service agreement will expire on December 31st of this year. As Patrick mentioned earlier, it's been almost 5 years since our last solicitation for security guard services. And in following best practices, last month the district issued an RFP utilizing the network bid system for security guard services. 40 companies were invited to participate on the proposal, and 11 firms submitted proposals. The evaluation and the scoring results of the proposals are listed in attachment A, which you can find on page 39 of your agenda packet. Absolute International Security, AIS, received the highest number of points after the evaluation and the scoring. They're also a women-owned business committed to hiring veterans, and they also employ staff of law enforcement as well as military and security backgrounds. They also operate an in-house dispatch center as well as an in-house licensed training center for all of their guards. At this time, I will read the recommendation. The recommendation is that the board authorize the general manager to enter into an agreement with Absolute International Security, AIS, located in El Monte, California, for security guard services for a 3-year term beginning on January 1, 2021 through December 31st, 2023 for a not to exceed contract amount of $322,125. That concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, just a quick one here from Director Williams.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just curious to know if you checked their references and what did their references have to say about them?
Absolutely. We did have an opportunity, staff had an opportunity to check the references. They did come back as very reliable and dependable security guards. Most of the security guards have 3 to 5 years tenure with this agency or with this company. They also have rotating security guards. So for example, if one of our guards would not be available, they call in sick, they immediately have one that would be dispatched into the area. So all 3 of the references that we did check, I was able to make contact with 2 of them. One of them, we did leave a message and we did not hear back from them, but from the 2 of the 3 references, we did have very good references for them.
I guess 2 out of 3 is not bad. All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
If there are no more questions, Desi, should we push this along to the board?
This should be moved on to the board.
Okay, I agree. We'll do that then. Now we'll go to item 5E.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Dear, item 5E. So we have agreements with the Torrance Refinery, actually the 3-way agreements with Torrance Refinery and the City of Torrance to sell them recycled water, different types of recycled water. Mostly the 2 main types of recycled water that we sell them are nitrified water. That's what this agreement is about. We also sell them low pressure boiler feed water. That's a separate agreement. So this agreement from 1995 expired back in July. We came to the board and got an extension through the end of the year to allow us to negotiate the next contract and probably have it marry up with the low pressure boiler feed contract at some point in the future. We're pretty close to having it wrapped up, but we are requesting that we can extend it for a couple of more months to wrap up these negotiations. And then Margaret has been involved with Barkev and myself in this. Margaret, would you care to add something?
No, thank you, Patrick, and good morning, directors. Happy to bring this before you. We are making progress working with the refinery and the City of Torrance as it relates to the terms for the new agreement. However, we are still negotiating through some of those terms, and we would like to extend that additional 2 months for that time to finalize those discussions. We have reviewed this extension with the city as well as the Torrance refinery, and they are acceptable to the 2-month extension as well. And so we are asking the board's approval to review or to extend this agreement, and I'd be happy to read the recommendation. And that recommendation can be found on page 41, and that is that the board authorizes the general manager to extend the July 1995 Torrance refinery nitrified recycled water agreement W551 between Mobil Oil Corporation, the City of Torrance, and West Basin Municipal Water District through February 28th, 2021. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
There being no questions, Desi, do you agree to?
Chairman Deere, I do have one request. I would like to get a copy of the existing agreement between the district and the Torrance refinery, as well as the City of Torrance. And I would like to request at this time copy of all of the recycled water agreements.
All right, if there's no objection from the rest of the board, we'll have that done.
Yes, we'll take care of that, Director Alvarez.
Okay, and then otherwise, I think given that there's additional time here and it's only 2 more months for further negotiations, this should be moved forward from just a practicality point of view.
Okay, we'll send that recommendation to the board. Thank you. Now we're on item 6, information calendar.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Deere. That completes our action calendar. We're moving on to our 6 information calendar items. And we have I guess you should move to page 42 of your board packet. This matter pertains to, we have our independent auditors do oh, I'm sorry, this is the financial audit and comprehensive annual financial report. And we do have somebody on the line here, I believe, from Roger, Anderson, Melody, and Scott Mano on the line. And I believe Wendy, I see Wendy popping up here. Wendy is our senior accountant. She's going to give us the details on the audit with Mr. Mano.
Thank
Wendy?
you, Patrick. Good morning, directors. My presentation today, I will be cover page 42 to page 154. I will be covering the annual financial audit and then comprehensive annual financial report. I'll start my presentation on page 42. As Patrick mentioned, our auditor, Roger Anderson, Melanie, and Scott LLP had completed the annual audit for West Basin for fiscal year 20. As a part of the annual audit procedure, the auditor reviewed West Basin's internal control, financial policy, tested the financial records, reviewed the financial statement, and then issued the independent audit report. Staff at West Basin also reviewed and responded to the auditor's recommendation, and then we plan to make an improvement in the future. Mr. Scott Mano, a partner from the auditing firm, will discuss the annual audit procedure and findings to the board members after my presentation. Government Code 53891 requires local government agency to submit the annual financial report to the state controller's office within 7 months after closing of the fiscal year. So for West Basin, we need submitting our report prior to February 1st, 2021. The data we submitted to the controller's office must be based on the audited financial statement, which is prepared by the generally accepted accounting principles. Based on the audited financial statement, we prepared comprehensive annual financial report, which is from page 45 to page 154 of your package. This comprehensive annual financial report has 3 sections. The section number 1, which is the introduction, is covered the general information about West Basin, who we are, what we do. Section number 2, which is the financial section, including the auditor's report on the basic financial statement, management discussion and analysis, and then also the notes to the financial statement. Section number 3, including 10 years historical data of West Basin's revenue, expenses, and then our water sales. I would like to give you a summary of the major financial activities for fiscal year 20. I'm now on page 43. West Basin implement Government Accounting Standard Board Statement number 75, accounting for post-employment benefit other than pension. This one is referred to the medical coverage West Basin pays for the qualified retirees. As of June 30, 2020, we had a net asset of $1.1 million in this account. West Basin also implement Government Accounting Standard Board Statement number 68. This is referred to the PERS and the PARS retirement plan. As of June 30, 2020, the PERS plan had net liability of $1 million, and the PARS plan had a $395,000 asset. In fiscal year 2020, West Basin potable and monitoring sales is $161 million. Expenses is $131 million. resulting in a net revenue of 30 million. West Basin's recycling revenue decreased from 46 million in fiscal year 19 to 43 million in fiscal year 20. The decrease was due to the reduction in demand from the refinery due to COVID-19. In addition, the local resources program incentive we're receiving from Metropolitan Water District, one of the agreement is ended on March 31st, 2020. Therefore, the last 3 months from April to June, all of our recycling water sales, we are not able to qualify for 200 acre feet per acre feet incentive from Metropolitan. Our water recycling costs increased from 37 million in 2019 to 38 million to fiscal year 20 due to the repairs for the aging facility. Capital contribution increased from 4.9 million in fiscal year 19 to 7.5 million in fiscal year 20 because we renewed one of the contract with an existing customer, and then they agreed to pay some capital project to West Basin. Interest income increased from 1.8 million in fiscal year 19 to 2.2 million in fiscal year 20 because we are actively managing the investment account. Overall, West Basin has a positive change in the net position of 9.9 million in fiscal year 19. West Basin also achieved 1.89 debt coverage when compared with the legal requirement of 1.15. We including the comprehensive annual financial report in the board package from page 45 to page 154 for you to review. And we are ready to submitting the report to Government Finance Officer Association for the award of Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. West Basin has been awarded for this certificate award since fiscal year 2006. This is the highest award a government agency can achieve. That is conclude my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any question you have.
Chairman Deere?
No questions.
So I'd like to introduce then now Scott Mano from Rogers, Melody, and Scott, Anderson, Melody, and Scott to make his presentation. And that presentation starts on page 169 of your board packet.
What page does it start on?
Page 169, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Board members, my name is Scott Mano. I'm a partner at Rogers, Anderson, Mallet. Well, first off, can everybody hear me?
Yes, Scott, we can hear you. Thank you.
I'm a partner at Rogers, Anderson, Mallet, and Scott, and this is our first year of doing the audit for the district this year. And what I'm going to do is going to give a high-level overview of what an audit is and what we do. And then at the end of that, if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. So next slide, please. Our responsibilities are to audit the financial statements of the district in accordance with U.S. generally accepted auditing standards, which are promulgated by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, government auditing standards, which are promulgated by the Comptroller General of the United States, and the state of California's minimum audit requirements. And what we're engaged to do during this process is plan the audit to express an opinion that management's financial statements are free of material misstatement. Now, one thing that I want to emphasize that these are management's financial statements. It's a large document, and within that document, I claim 2 pages. And pages 63 and 64 in the board packet, those are mine. Everything else is management's. And another thing we like, emphasis management's financial statements. And one thing we also like to emphasize is that we provide reasonable assurance, not absolute. In order to provide absolute assurance, we would have to be at the district every day, looking at every transaction. So we provide reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatement. And I'm happy to say we expressed an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that we can provide on a set of financial statements. Next slide, please. The audit process, typically we divide it up into 2 pieces, an interim piece and a year-end piece. During the interim time is when we review internal financial reporting. In that process, we look over various internal control cycles, as we call them. You have billing and cash receipts, cash and investments, the financial close process, payable and disbursements. In addition to looking over the controls of those payables and disbursement processes, we also ran data extraction over the accounts payables process and the payroll. We took the entire disbursement register, some data analytics, which provided us additional support for our opinion. And during that process, we also performed internal control testing over disbursements, payroll, purchasing contracts, and common controls. Next slide, please. And then like I said, we have the interim, and then we have the year-end. The year-end portion is what you think of when you think of an audit per se. It's when the district tells me that they have $10 million, and I say, prove it. Show me something that proves that you have $10 million. So that's what we did at the year-end portion. We conducted detailed audit of financial records. During that process, we inspect relevant documentation. We inquire about various transactions within the GL. We also confirm balances with outside parties, such as your cash and your banking. We perform various analytical procedures comparing prior year to current year budget to actual, looking for any unusual variances or anything that stands out during those comparisons. We read the minutes of the board meetings just to see if contracts were approved and stuff like that. And then we assisted in the preparation of the financial statements as well. Next slide. There were no significant changes in the reporting from last year, and there were no new accounting policies adopted this year. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board, who releases the the rules for governmental accounting, actually issued a standard this year that pushed any standards coming up a year out. So this year, none were adopted. That was due to COVID-19. So this year, there were no new standards. Next year, there may be some new ones that may affect the district. Next slide, please. We have some required communications. I believe those are in the board packet as well. We have a SAS 114 letter. We had no uncorrected misstatements to report, no difficulties working with management, and no disagreements with management. And then we have a report on internal control, which is required in accordance with government auditing standards. And we had no deficiencies, significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, or no matters of non-compliance reported. We did have 2 items of lesser significance that are also in the board packet, but they didn't rise, in our opinion, up to a significant deficiency or material weakness. Next slide, please. And if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Apparently no questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I just want to thank staff. You know, this was a trying time, a new client, trying to do all this COVID. We had a few hiccups going along the way, but I think next year will be a lot smoother. And I want to thank staff. You got a great staff there. Very helpful, very courteous. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're pleased to hear that. We know our staff are good people. Thank you.
And
Okay, we'll go to
from
item.
my perspective, can I just also add, Director Deere, if you wouldn't mind, we did appreciate that. I know that the audit supervisor is on the call as well. Laura, I just wanted to acknowledge her. She was very good about connecting with us, and I just want to acknowledge her for keeping us on task with, like he said, during COVID and trying to pull documents when we are working from home, and we made those arrangements to make sure that we got them in a timely manner. So again, thank you for the opportunity for to present this to you today. We're glad with the results. And he did mention, and I just wanted to bring it to your attention, the management letter comment, the two minor ones that are noted are in your agenda packet, starting on page 157 and 158. We do find them to be something that we can already address. But I wanted just to point them out just because they are things that they did identify. We are, like I said, already addressed them to make sure that we get sort of more timely acknowledgements of documentation of some of the work. And so wanted to just point that out, that we are already in making progress on those. Thank you so much.
Very good. Okay, that.
Okay, our next item, Chairman Deere, is on see what page 177 of your board packet, and it's titled Debt Considerations for Calendar Year 2021. Almost our entire debt revolves around our recycled water system, and we have various instruments, financial instruments to finance that. And from time to time, there are opportunities to do refunds or find new ways to fund our really our capital program for the recycled water system. So Margaret, I think you will take this, and I think you have Mr. Darren Hodge from PFM, our financial advisor, on the line. Darren, I saw you there somewhere, I thought. I'll hand, okay, Margaret, I'll pass this to you to take the lead on this, please.
Thank you very much. Again, good morning, or is it afternoon? It is afternoon. Good afternoon, directors. I would like to turn your attention to page 179 of the packet. That's where we'll begin our presentation. As Patrick mentioned, we have a debt outstanding because we have a very robust capital program. So turning to page 180 of your packet, I just wanted to also explain sort of the purpose of our capital program. As you know, we have the needs to expand our system and to maintain that system. And here gives us a few reasons why that is the case. In order to maintain our service levels, we need to keep the system working. And of course, we have a pretty extensive replacement and refurbishment program that is occurring today. In addition to that, we're looking to increase our sales, and that might be with a new agreement with a refinery. It could be some of our irrigation customers, but we hope to expand our system to continue to show the importance of recycled water system in the service area. And then finally, we're looking at other local supplies to improve our reliability, to increase that diversification of our capital program. Turning to slide 181, this here shows you the 5-year capital program projection. This information is shared with you, and this is what was presented when we presented the fiscal year 2021 budget. So you see here what we anticipate as being our 5-year spend that is there. I will note that we are in the process of the Recycled Water Master Plan. As many of you heard an update yesterday by Orlando regarding our Recycled Water Master Plan and how we are moving through that process, and we'll be bringing more information in the January-February timeframe to its completion, and then ultimately to the board for your review. But as we are looking at the information today, we see that we have a pretty robust program that's out there. Again, $43 million anticipated to be spent here in fiscal year 21. And then you can see that based off of the numbers we received from our engineering group, that number would go up to 80 million in year 22 and 23, and then dropping back down to around $30 million in year 24 or 25. So certainly as we talk about the Recycle Water Master Plan, part of that conversation, at least from my vantage point, is to see how we can smooth that number out over the horizon. As you can see, on average, it's about $55 million a year. And I want to also note that this is just really mostly reflecting what is happening with Recycle Water Program. In the other projects, there is a small amount of dollars for desal, and that's the current work that is being done today, but does not include the larger project that the board is still contemplating. Also in the other projects is small dollars relating to the brewer desalter, as well as the DLD, the Donald L. Deere building. Turning your attention to the next slide, 182. It's how do we go about financing those programs, those project costs? And if you see there, there's really three buckets that you see here. One is versus the government grants and loans. We have a good example of that. We have hopefully, we have a loan in place and a grant from the State Water Resources Control Board for the potential expansion to work with a Marathon for the expansion of the JMM Carson Regional Water Reclamation Plant. Next up, we have our public debt, and also in that area is our interim financing or commercial paper. And this is where you'll see that the district mostly has its debt outstanding. And we'll see on the following slide a little bit about the breakdown of where our debt is outstanding. And then finally, to the last column, you see the funding is coming from pay-as-you-go, or in other words, what are you pulling from cash or reserves in order to be able to pay that. Of course, that those funds that are coming from PAYGO is funded through rates and charges, just as we are able to do so in paying back that debt outstanding. So let's go down to next slide, page 183. 183 talks about what do we consider when we go out and debt finance. We understand that when we debt service, we need to be able to pay that back, and we pay that back through our rates and charges. So it could be on our recycled water rates, it could be on these capital fixed payments that we have at the refineries, it could be a number of things that we take into consideration. We also understand that long-term debt should be spread across the ratepayers, both those that are currently that are in the system today, if you will, and those that are into the future. So again, the intergenerational equity. And we also know that debt, when we take out debt, is not just the principal that we need to repay, it is paying that interest and financing costs associated with that. And then finally, the last important thing about debt is that we want to make sure that we have a proper balance between not only the debt that we have, but also the PAYGO that we use to meet those capital projects and make sure that we meet those financial objectives to fund those capital projects. So let's go to page 184. And on 184, you see where our current debt portfolio is. You can see that we have 4 debt issuances, the 2011, 2011B, I'm sorry, 2011A, 2011B, 2012A, 2016A. And what that means is we issued debt in 2011, we issued debt in 2012, and we issued debt in 2016. Those are our long-term debts outstanding. And in the final column, 2018, that is our commercial paper. So if you will, that is our just-in-time financing. We have a $50 million authorization. We've already drawn about 20 million of that funds to have those funds available for those capital programs. But that is something that we are able to use as needed. But the other debt issuances there, you can see why we issued them, what we were trying to do. You can see most of them were refunding current existing debt to take advantage of the market and see where we can go with it. But in addition, there were also opportunities for us to add new proceeds in there. So for instance, in the 2011B and the 2012A, that's where we were able to fund our phase 5 funding. Overall, we have about $263 million outstanding and an annual debt service of $23 million. So turning our attention to the next slide, this just shows you what our current schedule looks like. Thank you so much. And that shows you that we have a pretty level debt service in the next few years up through 2030. And that's important to us. Per policy, we try to make sure that we're managing our debt to sort of equal, if you will, sort of the life of our assets. But in addition to that, we want to make sure we have as level debt service that we can so we can manage those rate expectations. But you can see in those later years, we don't have as much there, and that's because some of our current debt will drop off. But that gives us opportunities for placing debt there in the future for those times when we see that it's needed. So moving on to slide 186, I wanted just to give you a bit of a comparison of showing you how we are funding our capital program for fiscal year 2021. So as it shows on page 186, we have about $43.7 million of capital expenditures. And you see the breakdown there. First of all, new infrastructure. Those are for expansion of our systems. It could be a pipeline. It could be with our customers that we're talking about. For instance, I think you've heard an update about Palos Verdes Lateral as far as Kenneth Hahn. Those are the kind of projects that would be there. A small amount there for consideration of our project that we hope to have with Marathon. Our R&R, you can see, is the most largest part there, about $23 million there. And our other, as I mentioned, reflects the little bit of cost for our desal, our brewer desalter, as well as our building. It also, for now, includes our administrative costs. So those engineers that spend their time, we group it there from a budgeting standpoint, but when they are actually incurred, they actually go to the specific program. But on the funding side, you see there that we have about $11.9 million of PAYGO funding. $31.4 million is coming from our commercial paper, and about 0.4 is coming from either the grants and our customer. Now, what's interesting to note about this is that typically when we think about R&R, we think about those short-lived projects that are typically funded, through our PAYGO funding. But you'll see that there's a mismatch there, that you see $22.7 million in projects, but $11.9 million of revenues that's going to pay for those costs. Now, what we're fortunate about, I guess, is that we have some very long-term assets there that are being sought to be replaced. These are initial assets that were established in the early 90s, 2000s, and they're seeing the end of their useful life. So a 20-25-year life. These are good candidates for us to be able to debt finance them into the future. Also, what you'll see there is that on the commercial paper, for instance, that the $31.4 million will take us to, maxing out, if you will, what is on our authorization for our commercial paper program. And as such, we want to make sure that we are taking aware of that, because as shown on that previous slide, we have some additional projects that are anticipated in fiscal year 22, as well as fiscal year 23. So let me turn your attention now to page 187. And 187 just kind of puts together that 5-year schedule and shows you what it looks like for funding that 5-year capital program. You can see there over the years of where we anticipate spending those fundings based off of the type of project that it is and the useful life. And you can see that PAYGO over the next 5 years is anticipated to be $108 million. That our commercial paper and our bonds is about $120 million, and that from our grants and from our other funding sources, we have shown about $30 million. So this really gives us a pause to say, well, how are we going to be able to fund that? As you saw, we have $11 million being funded in fiscal year 2021, but we somehow need to fund $108 million over the next time. And this gives us an opportunity in those later years to really look at those projects and see how do we go ahead and fund those? Could we actually find ourselves needing to debt finance them rather than using our cash? And these are all the considerations too when we are looking at how to set our rates. But in the middle column there, going back to that column, that $120 million you see there, you can see that we have a pretty extensive program, and we are looking at seeing how we can fund that project there. And so this is why we are looking at an opportunity for debt financing in 2021 to see how we can do that. So we have an opportunity to be able to finance those costs. And I'm going to turn it over to Darren to talk a little bit about how we will be able to deliver on our financing, as well as talk about the refunding opportunities ahead for us. With that, Darren, if you could join me and on screen, if possible.
Thank you, Margaret. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. If we can see you, that would be great as well.
Unfortunately, it's not letting me turn on my camera. So I'll go ahead and speak to it, and if we can figure out the camera, we'll get that as we go. But if we turn to slide to 188, what I want to talk about here is on the prior slide, we had identified that the CIP will require some level of debt financing. And as we'll talk about in today's market, we have an opportunity to finance a portion of these CIP needs at very low interest rates, both in the long and the short-term markets. And as Margaret talked about, over the last year, the district has successfully utilized its commercial paper program to fund some of these interim financing costs. And currently, we have about $20 million outstanding on that commercial paper program. As Margaret alluded to previously, however, the maximum authorization limit for that commercial paper program is $50 million. And when you compare that to the additional anticipated debt needs we have of $100 million, obviously there's a mismatch there as our debt needs exceed that authorization limit. And so, as is common with commercial paper programs, the intent here is that we'll use the commercial paper program strategically, but periodically we'd issue fixed rate bonds to take out that commercial paper program into a more long-term fixed rate cost of borrowing. Now, one of the things that we're looking at and we'll continue to analyze is what's the most beneficial use of commercial paper versus long-term fixed rate bonds. There's obviously a lot of considerations, and a couple of those really relate to making sure that any of our debt fit in with the updated recycled water master plan. We know that we have future CIP needs, and we know that those needs are going to change. And so any sort of a strategy that we implement today needs to take those into account and needs to be flexible to accommodate those so that it doesn't overly impact ratepayers. Turning to page 189, please. So today's market provides an opportunity for us to finance our CIP needs at historically low rates. And I want to look at this graph, and I apologize in advance, this graph is quite small, but I'll talk through this and kind of guide us through what it represents. So this graph is illustrative of the AAA MMD index. And what AAA MMD is, this is the municipal market's tax-exempt index that we use to price bonds off of. So this is an indicative high-grade interest rate for the municipal market. And what we've done here is these gray lines, these represent the range at which MMD has fluctuated from 1981 to today. And so you can see there's a wide fluctuation in interest rates, and you'll see blue lines right there, right about in the middle of those gray lines. The blue lines represent what the average rate has been over that time. And then if you take a look, it might be hard to see, but there's a green line at the very bottom of those ranges. That represents where we are today. So when we talk about rates being near historical lows, this is perhaps one of the best ways to illustrate just where we stand from a historical perspective. And so one of the things that this allows us to do, as I mentioned previously, was as we're looking at what's the best way to finance our capital improvement needs, as well as manage our commercial paper program, looking at whether there's an opportunity for us to look to 2021 to use fixed rate bonds to finance those CIP needs, as well as take out our commercial paper. And if we turn to the next slide, I'll talk about a hypothetical scenario we ran just to give some numbers to what that would look like. So one of the things that we ran was a hypothetical $50 million financing with fixed rate bonds. And so we used a traditional, very conservative 30-year level debt service structure. And the rate that we could lock in today's borrowing at would be about 2.93%. So for a 30-year debt, we would be locking in a sub 3% rate, so very low interest rates. And what that means in terms of a cash flow is that our annual debt service payments would increase by about $2.5 million. So that would obviously be an increase on what we're currently paying, but spreading that out over 30 years makes it a little bit more manageable from a budgetary perspective. One of the things that we're obviously looking at is taking a look at what this cost of financing would look like versus commercial paper and also managing the potential risk that any financings through commercial paper are subject to market changes. And so to the extent that commercial paper rates in the future, making sure we account for that just given today's market. If we turn to the next slide. So the other opportunity that today's market rates provide us is we on an ongoing basis monitor our existing debt portfolio for opportunities to refinance our bonds. Obviously, that's advantageous because it lowers our debt service costs. And there's two primary ways in the municipal market that we refinance debt. The first is through a current refunding. And all a current refunding means is that we close the refunding, we execute the refunding within 90 days of when the bonds are callable. The second type is called an advance refunding. An advance refunding is any refinancing in which we close or execute the refunding more than 90 days ahead of the call date. And in 2017, with tax reform, the municipal market lost our ability to advance refund bonds on a tax-exempt basis. And so when you look at our plan of finance for 2021, what you'll see is that we're structuring the schedule such that we can close or execute the refunding within that current refunding timeframe, given the 2011 bonds are callable beginning August 1st of 2021. And so using the same rates that we talked about previously, we ran out of refinancing of your 2011A and 2011B bonds. And given that historically low interest rate environment we're in, right now we could lock in PV savings of about $18 million. And one of the ways that we measure PV savings as kind of a barometer of how attractive they are is looking at them as a percentage of the bonds that we're refunding. And right now, that PV savings percentage is about 23.8%. And to put that in perspective, you know, if you go back 10 years or so, we were executing refundings that were achieving between 5 to 7% of PV savings. And so this level is very high, and primarily due to the fact that we're in this currently low interest rate environment. So with that, Margaret, I'll turn it back over to you for the next slide.
Yes, thank you. And just to clarify, PV, when we talk about that, is not Palos Verdes, it's present value. So present value savings. Wanted just to make sure that we understood that. So again, thank you for turning to page 192 in your packet. We wanted just to give you a sense of timing that's associated here. It does take a while to put these transactions together. And wanted just to start with, just to let you know that years ago, we actually had an underwriting pool. When we did those 2011s and 12s and the 16s, we used an underwriting pool to be able to pull on that. So they are investment banking firms that we would use, and as we come up with any individual transactions, we would then go to that pool to be able to solicit ideas from them on how to structure the deal. And so we are currently under a RFP for those services, and we will be bringing back a recommendation for an underwriting pool at the January Finance and Administration Committee to be approved by the board at their January board meeting. Following that, once we have that pool selected, we will have made a selection of a financing team of, I should say, an underwriting firm that we'll use along with our financing team. And as I noted there on the slide, that financing team incorporates our district staff, our municipal advisor, which is PFM, who you're hearing from today is Darren. Our bond counsel, we use Stradling, and Doug Brown is our contact there. Trustee, at present, we use US Bank. And then again, whoever is the underwriting bank and their bank counsel. I wanted just to also let you know that as depending upon the size of the transaction, we could see ourselves working with multiple underwriter banks for this transaction. Typically, if it's in the $20 million range, perhaps not. But once you get to that 75+ million, it's nice to have that diversity and that range, if you will, that those individual banks can reach out to their potential investors of our bonds. From there, we will prepare our bond documents and we will then present that information to the board in a subsequent month. We will also be presenting that information to our credit rating agencies, and we use currently both Moody's and S&P. For you, Director Alvarez, just to give you a little bit of background, we have a AA rating from Moody's and a AA- rating from S&P. For April and or May, depending upon timing and when it seems appropriate to be out in the market, we will be bringing back the bond documents for your review and approval, as well as the cost of issuance. So those costs that it is from using all of those consultants that I mentioned previously, but also the underwriting costs and other associated costs that might come from the transaction. And then also, we will then be following that with then pricing that transaction. One of the key documents that they have is what we refer to as an official statement. It's like a prospectus that we would get from like our mutual funds. We use an official statement here in the government side, and we will be sharing that with our underwriters, who would then use that as our marketing tool to allow individuals to get to know West Basin and want to purchase those bonds. And then the following month, again, depending upon when we go and bring those transactions out there, we would then close that transaction. So by the new fiscal year, we will then be seeing ourselves with hopefully that refunding savings you saw on that previous slide, as well as hopefully those additional fundings that's necessary to support our capital program. And we have one more slide, and then we can take any more questions or any questions from you, which is on our LIBOR transaction. Very important thing. I'm going to turn it back to Darren to talk to you about what LIBOR means to here to us at West Basin.
Thank you, Margaret. So one of the other items that we'll be working through over the next year is the LIBOR transition. And in response to allegations of manipulation of LIBOR that occurred during the 2008 financial crisis, in 2017, the regulators announced that LIBOR would be phasing out at the end of 2021, the calendar year 2021. And the reason that this is important to us is that we currently have two outstanding LIBOR-based fixed rate swaps. And so what this means is that we are working through and will need to finalize a strategy to move our swaps away from the LIBOR index to an alternative index. And right now we're analyzing several different strategies by which to do this. The first is adhering to the LIBOR fallback protocols. The second is looking at amending our existing swaps to an alternative index away from LIBOR. And the third is something that we are always looking at, is ways to terminate the swaps. And what we've been doing and what we'll continue to be working on is the district PFM bond council will be working with the auditor and amongst ourselves and analyzing these alternatives and trying to identify the potential financial, legal, and accounting considerations with each of these, as they are all important. And from a timing standpoint, we are anticipating currently that we will transition away from LIBOR in the first quarter of calendar year 2021. And with that, Margaret, I'll turn it back to you.
Yes, so thank you for your time today. We wanted just to give you highlights, if you will, of our 2021 planning. We don't typically go out for debt financing. We see that we have a great opportunity here in the new year. Wanted just to share with you a little bit of the considerations that we're thinking about, a little bit about the process as well. And with that, we'll turn it back to you, Chairman Deere, for any questions to Darren and myself or Patrick.
Okay, any directors have questions?
Chairman Deere, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Going back to page 184 on the interest on the current outstanding bonds, you guys are showing, or you show in the table a range. Are those variables, or do we have a better number as to what the current rates are?
So there is a range there depending upon what year that the bond is specifically there. So it can range, let's say 2020 could be at a range of 2.5%, but then these debt actually goes out to 2037, for instance, or 2024. So those are, so that within that year, there is a fixed rate specifically for each one of those years. It's just that there's a range within those years. Am I making myself? I don't think I made myself clear.
Okay, so just for example, let's talk about the 2011A issue, and the range is 2.5% to 5%. so that annually that interest rate changes?
No, the interest rate is fixed for, it's based off of the year of the debt. So if the debt is maturing in 2019, it has a rate. If it's maturing in 2023, it has a fixed rate. If it's maturing in 2024, it has a fixed rate. So each of them are there, but it could be 2.5 in 2019, and it could be 5% in 2024, for instance.
Okay, so just for my understanding, in the 2011 A issuance, there are several bonds issued that year, or just one?
It's one bond, so there is one bond issuance, but with multiple years. So
Okay.
it goes out from, from 2011 to 2024. So there's bonds being issued. There is a maturity each year. So, and that's the bond payment that we're making each year.
Okay.
So it's kind of, if you're like paying down your principal on your home, it's the amount that we're setting aside. It's just that it may vary from year to year depending upon, it could be how we want to structure the deal. It could be how many particular bondholders that are soliciting for that particular bond. They seem to like the early years, and they like the late years. The in-between years, they seem to shy away from like 10 to 15 years. And so we look to see how we can entice bondholders to purchase bonds in those years. And if they don't purchase any bonds, then that's where the underwriting bank comes in, and they will purchase the bonds on our behalf. And we can get you some more information on what the structure looks like for each one of these bonds so that you can see what the maturity is and what the rate is.
That would be great. Thank you.
Are there other questions? Okay, Pat.
Thank you for those reports, and thank you for our consultants who joined us. Our next item is on the information calendar. So per our administrative code, section 4-1-104B, internal reporting, we submit a monthly report. We're required to submit a monthly report to the board to keep them apprised of various financial issues and items. There are usually 6 components to this report, and our manager of finance, manager of finance, Marianne Rexroad, is on the call here, and I think this starts on packet page 194 of your packet. Good afternoon, Marianne.
Good afternoon, Patrick. Thank you for that introduction, and good afternoon, board members, and welcome Desi to the board. I want to just have you all start on your packet, page 196. As Patrick indicated, there are a number of reports that we do present to you each month, and we will start off with the demand list. Just to give you a little background, the demand list includes all of the payments that the district makes to conduct business for the month. And we are presenting the month of November. If I could ask you to turn to page 199 of your packet. You'll see for the month of November, we expended about $16.2 million. Just to point out, this was about $1.8 million less than the prior month of October. Primarily, the reason is we did have one more check run during the month of October than we did in November. Also, in the month of October, our water sales payment to MWD was about $450,000 higher than in November. With that, I'll just pause for a moment to see if there's any questions before I move on to our cash and investments report.
Yes, not.
Okay, all right. So if I could ask you all to move to page 200 of your packet. Starting on page 200 is the cash and investment report. This report includes the district's operating cash and investments. You'll see at the very top left-hand corner, we have a total market value as of November 30th of $81.4 million. This is an increase from prior month of about $2.2 million. I just want to take a moment and maybe explain this first page. It is a few pages, this report. So this first page gives you an overview of the security types that the district has and also the amounts for each type. In that bar at the top, it shows you within a percentage. And it also shows at the bottom of below the pie chart, you'll see the exact amounts that we have in the different security types. You'll see that the money market fund, which is primarily LAIF or local investment fund, makes up the biggest part of our portfolio today. If I could ask you to turn to page 201. On page 201, there's two charts. The top bar chart does show the credit quality of the district's portfolio. Well, I want to point out also on the far right-hand side, that last bar, about 40 million, does include the LAIF account, as well as some other small money market accounts we have in our general checking and health account. And you see that says NA for quality, just because those are typically not rated by the credit agencies. But you can see that the district maintains very high quality investments. Below that first chart on the bottom of the page, you'll see the maturity distribution of our portfolio. And per government, California Government Code, West Basin does not invest in any securities greater than 5 years. So you see the bar chart includes from what is no duration, which represents our LAIF account. Again, that is money that we keep that's very liquid, that we can pay our day-to-day expenses. And then as long as we call LAIF before 10 a.m. in the morning, we can actually get funds the same day if need be. Moving on to the following page, page 202. This is a summary of the transactions that happened during the month of November. The very top shows all of our purchases, and the bottom half will show you all our sales and maturities for the month. So you can see that we pretty much, if we have a sale or maturity, we try to reinvest those funds very quickly. And then following on pages 203 through 205 is the detailed list of all the securities by type that we have, starting from agencies, which are like your Fannie Mae's, your Freddie Mac's, and then list all the way down until you get to the last page, which shows our total market value of 81.4 million. So again, I'll just pause there to see if there's any questions before I move on to water sales. All right, so let's move on to water sales. I believe it was a handout. We did complete those bills just yesterday, so this is hot off the press. And want to start off at the very top of the page. This is our water sales for imported retail. We do a comparison of our current year to prior year as well as budget. You'll see in the blue chart or the blue bar, that is our prior year 1920 sales as compared to the red lines, which are the current year sales, and that black line represents our budget for the year. If I could then point out to you, in the month of November, we did experience lower sales in the month of November as compared to last year and as well as to the budget. However, if you look over to the far right, you'll see the year to date. We are slightly below last year, but we did anticipate that with the impact of the pandemic, and we did budget for those lower sales. And you can see that by looking at that last line there for the budget. We are still in the black. We are exceeding the budget by about 1,800 acre feet through November. Moving down to the bottom of that page, this chart represents our imported barrier sales. We have injections into two barriers. One is the New Dominguez Gap, and the second being the West Coast Barrier. Again, this is a comparison of prior year with current year and to the budget. In this case, the gray bar represents the prior year, the green bar represents the current year, and that black line is the budget. So you will see in the month of November, we did exceed the budget However, we were slightly lower than last year, but this is very difficult for us to budget on month-to-month basis because we don't have a lot of control. This is what the county injects into the two barriers. So, and we're also dependent on how much recycled water is injected by LADWP into the Dominguez Gap. But overall, we are at 1,630 acre feet for the year. We're tracking a little bit below budget of 1,960 acre feet. And moving on to the next page is our recycled water sales. With our recycled water sales, again, we have our bar charts. The grayish tan color, well, I guess it's tan, is our fiscal year 1920 sales as compared to the purple line, which is our current year sales. And that black line does represent the budget. During last year's budget process, we did identify that we were going to see some lower sales due to the pandemic. So we did factor that in here. And you'll see that in the first 3 to 4 months of the year, we did quite well. And in fact, November, we tracked pretty much on to what was last year. Overall, on the year to date, we are tracking just about even with last year, about 125 acre feet below. We are below budget by about 540 acre feet. And I did talk to operations and did confirm that the majority of this reason is due to the injection of the barrier water into West Coast Barrier. Moving down below the second page here is our desalter. Unfortunately, the desalter has been down. The operations staff is working to get that back online. So you see we had only just 1 acre feet of sales during the month, but I'm told that there's we're hoping to be back online in early January. And again, I'll pause there to see if there's any questions on water sales. All right, so the last 2 reports are the director's conference and travel expense. You can see from this report, the annual budget is $75,000. We have not expended very much. For the year, we've expended $2,166. So we have a remaining budget in there of about $72,000, almost $73,000. The following page is the executive management and staff travel report. Again, we are well below budget. We have a budget of $150,000, and to date we've sold or we've expended less than $6,500. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Currently, there are none. Thank you very much for a good report.
Thank you.
Pat?
Yes, Dear, this brings us to information item 6D. And you'll recall, except as you put back on the board meeting on September 28th, 2020, the board had requested that staff explore videotaping our committee and board meetings and getting them up on our website and onto YouTube and other platforms. And staff was able to achieve that fairly quickly in the short term, and with the acquisition of the Civic Streaming that works hand in hand with Granicus and allows us to get the meetings on our website next to where all of our other board information resides. We have always recorded the meetings audibly, but this is now, they're now being video recorded. Additionally, I want to have Isaiah, see Isaiah. Additionally, the board said to come back within 90 days and evaluate, you know, I guess in a post-pandemic, more normal situation where we would have the capability of videotaping meetings at the boardroom, at other locations, including the treatment plant or the water education center at the Edward C. Little plant. And that's what staff has been doing over the past couple of months. They've been evaluating what that would look like in terms of cost and potentially schedule. So this is bringing back that information. Isaiah, would you care to take this item, please?
Yes, thank you for that introduction, Patrick. Good afternoon, Chairman Deere and the members of the committee and board. So as Patrick discussed, our first phase of this project was to initially get our the recordings of our GoToMeetings online. So Fortunately for us, with our current agenda management system, we were able to expand the capabilities and implement the add-on of Civic Streaming. That add-on gave us the ability to upload and host these videos on our website and integrate it seamlessly. The second phase of this project was to kind of focus on the return to the building post-COVID and how we would record our in-person board meetings. Staff researched a few different options of initially trying to manage it internally. However, due to the scope of the work, we determined it would be by an outside specialist. So we reached out to one vendor to go ahead and kind of guide us through the process and what's involved. And as you can see in our little chart below, it's a high-level explanation. You have your AV feed that goes into
Isaiah, just you're on page 209, correct?
Yes, 209. I apologize. And on the bottom of page 209, you'll see the chart. As I mentioned, you have your AV feed, and that's the camera, audio, etc. And that goes into quite a few different components. And those components at a high level, we just call them AV equipment. And that includes your mixer, any audio controls, any other AV equipment that's necessary. And that goes into our Minute Track Civic Streaming encoder. And with that device allows us to live stream and stream our board and committee meetings to various outlets. Currently, we are uploading our videos only to YouTube. However, this will give us the capability to expand on that further, such as integrating with Facebook, Twitter, etc. There's a lot of different platforms we could get our message out there. That would be kind of the direction of the board. Staff reviewed the member agencies and cities of the Metropolitan Water District and determined most of the agencies are currently using their agenda management system for the same purpose. They allow their citizens the ability to view live and archive video recording. On page 210, you will see table A. We've broken down the costs associated with upgrading our rooms to upgrade our rooms to provide this capability. The boardroom, which is our main conference room that we use to host our meetings, would cost approximately our estimated cost is $137,000. And as you see, the other rooms, they are lower in cost, and the reason for lower in cost is the amount of equipment needed for those rooms, and there's a lot of different variables, and that includes size of the room, the audio capturing devices, how well the audio can be captured. Larger room requires more equipment to ensure everybody's being captured correctly. And then we also added an option for a portable recording system, which then will allow us to record meetings on the fly at different locations. So with that being said, based on the board's input and the direction, the number of locations, there's quite a few that can be upgraded if the board decides to. Operating the AV equipment will require specialized skills, and those usually just retrieving training on all the AV equipment. And at this point, that concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
I'm wondering, this is Don Deere. This is Don Deere with a question. I'm wondering, in addition to the boardroom, why are two other rooms included in the headquarters building?
In the last, sorry.
I think one of the reasons was, as part of the request, the boardroom is unavailable due to a class or some kind of conflict, and we certainly have conducted committee meetings in some of the other rooms from time to time, so that was included as requested.
I see. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chair, I have a question, Chair Deere. These are one-time costs, basically for equipment purchases and installation in the different rooms?
Yes, This is a one-time cost that includes the installation, the equipment installed, the configuration, the testing phase. Um, there will be option for some equipment for us to renew for kind of in the term is maintenance and support. So ensure we have full warranty in case it does go bad. Usually on the higher end equipment that costs over 10K is kind of where we look at, we do the analysis and determine the cost benefit of opting in for that hardware. And some of those variables at the time of we decide is kind of the failure rate, the cost, or if it makes sense to keep a spare on hand. And usually some of those considerations we look at, once we actually have the definitive part numbers at hand.
Okay, just another question. You've included in here an option for buying the portable recording system for the remote. Can that be used in one of the setup if we need to broadcast because the boardroom's not available in one of the conference rooms?
Yes.
Yeah,
Thank you. That's all I
I
got
think,
for now.
okay, just to add to that, Director Alvarez, the portable one, I believe, was if we had, a ribbon cutting or groundbreaking or something out at some remote site, we could use that particular equipment. I believe Director Houston, you had a question?
Yes, if it's okay with Mr. Chair. Director Deere. Okay, thank you, Chair Deere. Yeah, I did have a question. Actually, both Director Alvarez and Director Deere asked my first question because, first of all, stepping back for a moment, I want to say thank you, staff. Thank you, Isaiah, for looking into this because this was my motion 3 months ago almost. I do think we need to continue moving this forward. I want to ask up front, obviously, these are just estimates from one source or somewhere you've done some research, but these are just pure estimates. We really don't know concrete numbers, correct?
That's correct. That's
okay,
correct.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Pat. Okay, so first of all, I would say number one, let's not get sticker shock here. Number two is the first priority, of course, would be the boardroom. I don't think we really need sophisticated equipment in any of the conference rooms. I think a portable system, whatever that is, can be used for those purposes at the Donald L. Deere building. And maybe down the road, Ed C. Little could be looked at. I don't think that, we could also piecemeal this. But a couple other things on my mind here is one, I really would like to ask that staff continues researching this. Let's perhaps get some more concrete information with this feedback. Again, focusing on what do we need to do to the boardroom to upgrade it, and then do we decide yes to go out to bid. And I will also say lastly, there are a number of different systems I've seen. I mean, we all know what the city council chambers typically have, but also I've seen some unique systems like what they have at El Camino College for the Board of Trustees, or what I've seen at different school board locations. I will tell you, I do not know how sophisticated or not these are, but at the same time, there are multiple systems that different agencies are using, and they should not hopefully be breaking the bank. And lastly, again, this is, I think, a very important obligation that this district has to move forward. So I do ask that hopefully my colleagues agree that staff should continue researching and bring back more information with this feedback. And one last thing, the wonderful thing is right now, these go-to meetings, we're able to utilize recordings immediately and put them up on YouTube. So that's great. So this pandemic doesn't seem to be ending anytime soon. So there's also not a massive rush here just yet to get answers. So I think we can do research, we can potentially go out to bid, and then maybe even start some work at the facility before we're even back in the building. So there's some real good portions that help us here. So I want to say thank you, but I would ask that we continue moving forward, but take the conference rooms off at this time, really look at the portable system, as well as what are different options that could be utilized in the boardroom for sound and audio and video. So thank you.
Chair, Mr. Chair, this is Gloria Gray. May I speak?
Go ahead, Gloria.
I thank you. I want to kind of step back a little bit. I know that we have been videotaping the meetings based on our GoToMeeting, and we've been able to post these on YouTube. And so the purpose was to make sure the public, as much as the public could, be aware of our meetings. So moving forward, what is our purpose? Because the pandemic probably will last, for another 4 to 6 months in terms of being comfortable with returning. It could be short, it could be learning. So this is kind of a large investment, and we do need to make sure that what we do is something that the public supports, because we are concerned about our ratepayers and so forth. And so it's kind of a huge investment, and I think we should look at what is the real purpose of what we're doing and long term. And I agree, we need to make sure that, well, we don't need to make a decision quickly about this until we're very clear about what our purpose is moving forward, when we are able to go back into some kind of normalcy. And so, I do think staff are looking into it. I would like to see more research in terms of other companies, and if you have already done that, and it's just an average, then that's fine. But I don't think we need to make any rush decision, because it is quite a bit of commitment in terms of funding for this particular issue. So with that, I think we just need to keep talking about it, because at present we are already able to record ourselves and the public can see us on YouTube. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria. Any other comments from directors? If not, we'll proceed on the agenda to item 6E.
Mr. Chair, it's Director Houston.
Go ahead, Director Houston.
So, well, I do want to clarify what I was asking, if I could, as a board member, is for staff to continue researching with at least my input. So I don't think that stopped any discussion, but I didn't hear if that's what the instruction is coming out of this committee. I do understand what President Gray said, and by all means, financially we need to see. That's why I would like staff to continue researching. So I just want to make sure, is that the instruction coming out of this, or do we need to, I don't know, take it to the board to formally talk about it? Please someone instruct me on the next steps.
Pat, what do you think?
What I would suggest, and what I'm hearing from the board, obviously what we're doing currently is working in terms of recording and getting stuff uploaded onto our system and our website and various platforms. But what I'm hearing from this discussion is that to continue the research and looking into it to get maybe more definition of some of these numbers, we're really focusing on this boardroom that I'm in right now with Julie, and make use of the portable recording system here, maybe for some of the other rooms. I'm not sure if the Water Education Center is included. I didn't hear a time frame, but I would think that maybe we could come back in another 90 days. If Isaiah, that sounds reasonable to you, to gather some more information, and maybe, I think Director Gray said, see maybe what other agencies are doing, and continue to monitor the system that we have in place right now for efficacy and achieving the purpose, the original purpose. So that's Chairman Deere is what my understanding, and I added the 90-day time frame as that wasn't discussed, but we need some kind of time frame.
Directors, do you agree with that, Director Desi? Okay.
I agree with that. Yes.
Okay, that will be our committee's recommendation then.
Okay.
Any other comment?
No. I would say I would prefer maybe within 60 days, if that would not be unreasonable, because then we could decide if then we would proceed with going out to bid, which I know takes more time. So I think that maybe 60 days, that's 2 months. I think that's reasonable, but I'm open to the committee.
Well, the committee's just granted, requested 90 days, but we'll let staff understand that we prefer 60 if at all possible. With this COVID thing, things are kind of screwed up, so it's really hard to set goals. It's okay, we'll do it that way.
Oh, great. That sounds great, Director Deere. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. Just one more clarification. So as we discussed, I think at our meeting yesterday, this is the Christmas season. It's hard to really get a whole lot of contact people to get this information. So the 60 days, if we can do that, would be, let's say, 60 days from the beginning of the year, I would assume we're talking about. Okay. All right. Thank you. The beginning of 2021, that is. Okay. Next item, Chairman Deere.
Director Deere, can I? Director
yes.
Deere, Gloria.
Let's hold on. Director Gray has a comment. Director Gray, go ahead.
Yeah. And I really think the board should determine what is the purpose of what we're doing in terms of expending the funds for this particular issue. We need to make sure we're clear about what the purpose of it is for, and then I think that way we can decide how we want to accomplish it, whether it's the boardroom or anything else, or something portable. And I do agree with the 90 days because it's going to take time. This is the holiday season, so I think we should look at making sure staff can do the research. So thank you, Director Deere.
Thank you, Director Gray. If there's no further comment, we'll go on to item 6E.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Deere. Back in on October 16, 2020, at the Finance Committee, we presented an item on our tuition reimbursement process. And basically, it was to highlight to the district that our the general manager's authority is up to $50,000 with some constraints. But some of the tuition, the pre-approval for tuition reimbursement, the amounts being asked were in excess of $50,000, as high as $100,000 and maybe $125,000. Then we had our legal counsel opine on that, and the board had asked from that meeting to first of all give us a 5-year history. How much have we spent on tuition reimbursement? How does it work? What are other agencies doing? And to just tee up that discussion, and we'd bring it back and maybe get some more direction in terms of if we need to modify anything in our tuition reimbursement policy and process. So our HR manager, Michelle Green, good afternoon, Michelle, how are you? Is going to present a PowerPoint on this that addresses the questions raised from the committee meeting last month or in October.
Thank you, Patrick. Good afternoon, Chairman Deere and members of the board, and welcome as well to our new director, Alvarez. You're welcome. As Patrick mentioned, this is a follow-up to an item that was brought to committee back in October. And essentially, West Basin has established a tuition reimbursement policy to encourage employees to pursue pre-approved educational opportunities. In the administrative code, section 3-4.216, it sets forth the procedures that an employee must follow in order to request reimbursement. The code also comprises a tuition reimbursement benefit for the board under Part 2, Administration, Article 5, Directors Benefits, Section 2-1.509. So as Patrick has indicated, I prepared this PowerPoint just to give you an overview of our policy as it stands today. If you turn to page 213 of your packet, actually now to page 214, these are the general requirements for the district's tuition reimbursement policy or benefit. So the employee must be a full-time employee who has completed their initial probationary period. Part-time and limited-term employees are excluded from this benefit. Employees must submit planned course of study for the degree program or preparatory coursework for professional licenses or certifications, and they must ask for pre-approval prior to beginning the program or the coursework. Now on page 215 of your packet, What we are reimbursing for, what is eligible for reimbursement, is essentially 90% of tuition, registration, and parking fees, and required books and laboratory costs per quarter or semester for job-related coursework. And the key here is that the coursework must be job-related. 100% of reimbursement is established for renewal of professional licensure, certification, and individual professional memberships that relate directly to the business or operation of the district. And employees are only eligible for reimbursement for a bachelor's or master's degree and associated examination fees for professional licenses or certificates. Postgraduate work, such as a doctoral degree or a second master's program, is not eligible for reimbursement under this benefit. Continuing on to page 216, upon completion of the coursework, the employee must provide evidence of a minimum grade C or pass in the case of pass or fail in order to obtain the reimbursement. And employees are usually submitting for reimbursement upon the coursework completion. So they're not submitting the reimbursement or for the reimbursement at the end of their degree program. They're doing so as they pass that class, whether with, like as indicated previously, with a C or a pass and a pass-fail scenario. Employees, the policy also states that employees must repay the entire reimbursement if they leave district employment within 24 months of completion of the degree or the license or certification that they have received. Moving on to page 217 of the packet. As Patrick indicated earlier, we had the board ask some specific questions with regard to what has been our reimbursement history over the past 5 years or so of this benefit. So as you can see here from this chart, we have had 5 classifications or 5 individuals in these classifications that have requested reimbursement for various items. The first is a contracts administrator, and in that case, that individual requested tuition reimbursement for a master's program in business administration. We had another classification, deputy board secretary 2, that requested reimbursement for license, in this case for a notary license. An engineer 2 position that required or requested reimbursement for a master's program in civil engineering. And then also that same individual received reimbursement for engineer in training certification. And then we have an operations analyst who requested reimbursement for a master's in civil engineering. As you can see from the cost there, this was just for a portion. This person had already started their master's program prior to coming to the district, but after they passed their probation, did request reimbursement for the continuation to obtain their civil engineering degree. That same individual also received reimbursement for a water treatment operator certification. And lastly, we have an operations analyst who also requested reimbursement for water treatment operator certification. Moving on to page 218. So we were also asked, staff was also asked to review what other agencies have done with regard, or what they're doing with regard to their tuition reimbursement policies. So as you can see from this list here, I did a comparison to various water districts in our area. And we have, all of these districts do have a policy, tuition reimbursement policy or benefit for their employees that covers, in addition to ours, books and other fees. As you can see, however, there is a reimbursement limit in most of these agencies with regard to how much that agency will reimburse their employees for this benefit. Irvine Ranch will reimburse, as per their policy, up to 75%. Las Virgenes will reimburse only $685 per course. Metropolitan Water District will reimburse up to $9,000 per fiscal year. The Municipal Water District of Orange County will reimburse to 75% or $420 per unit. Orange County Water District will reimburse $3,000 for an undergraduate degree per fiscal year and $5,000 for a graduate degree per fiscal year. Three Valleys will reimburse up to $3,000 per fiscal year. Water replenishment districts, will reimburse up to 100% for tuition reimbursement, and then Western Municipal Water District will reimburse up to $7,250 per fiscal year. There are some common, as you can see on page 219, there's some common practices across the board for all of these agencies. And some of those practices are that only full-time employees are eligible who have passed probation or worked for the agency for at least 6 months. There are 2 agencies, however, who also reimburse for part-time employees. Those agencies are Metropolitan Water District and the Metropolitan Water District of Orange County. Then most of or all of these agencies will reimburse for certification and licenses as well. And most agencies have a repayment criteria for this policy that you must repay the reimbursement or at least a prorated amount if the employee leaves the agency within a certain time frame, and that we found that to be usually 2 to 3 years. Also, all agencies are in compliance or working within compliance of the Internal Revenue Code, Section 127 and Section 132. J8 and the California Revenue and Taxation Code, which speaks specifically to job-related education and talks about the fact that in such cases, it's not taxable to the employee if the educational expenses qualify as a working condition fringe benefit. So the district operates under this benefit under the 132J because we don't classify it, we classify it as a working condition fringe benefit. However, under Section 127, they do have very specific tests that they require an agency to look at to determine whether or not that benefit should not be considered a fringe benefit and thereby taxable to the employee. So in that case, under Section 127, if the education that the individual is seeking does not fit into that test or answer those tests, which is primarily if it's a part of a program or study that will qualify the employee for a new trade. For example, it's a business that the district does or the agency does, but it does not fall into the specific job performance that individual does, then it's not a fringe benefit. And thereby that individual would be required to have a certain amount of that benefit or reimbursement taxable to them. And so we do, however, follow the 132 section of the IRC code. And staff is currently reviewing this benefit further and intend to bring it back to the district at some point for consideration at a later date, taking into account what we found some other agencies are doing with regard to this benefit that they provide. That concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if the board has any.
Chair Deere, I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
Right
Go
now,
ahead.
if we can go back to the churn policy. So the general manager has authority to basically approve these requests, or do they come back to the board above a certain amount? For example, the one tuition reimbursement for a master's degree of $79,960.
So yes, the general manager, under the way the policy is currently structured, does have the authority to approve that benefit or has the authorization to approve it, and without bringing that item back to the board. However, as Patrick indicated earlier, and he may want to speak to this further, we did bring this item to the board back in October because of some additional reimbursement requests that we had received, and he wanted to bring it to the board's attention that it was outside of his general signing authority. And so, but in the past, the general practice has been that the general manager does have the authority to sign off on or authorize that tuition reimbursement as long as the employee meets all the requirements for it.
Yeah, can I add something to that, Michelle? Yeah, we did bring it to the board, and we had a legal opinion on this, Director Alvarez, because it does conflict with the general manager's authority. But the way it's written right now, and as Steve O'Neill explained, the pre-approval can be done to the under the current rules and the current. I think really what the whole idea is that maybe we bring back to the board a suggested modification to this policy, and also in light of what some of the other agencies are doing and what's included and what's not included, for the board's consideration, if that's what the board direction is. But as it stands right now, Director Alvarez, yeah, the pre-approval can be signed off after it's signed off by HR as being eligible. Then it goes to general manager for signing. Pre-approved, paid after the degree and the coursework is completed.
And for example, on that particular one of the $79,000, was that over 1, 2, 3 years? How long did it take that individual to get that master's?
So as you can see from, and if you refer, Director Alvarez, to page, I'm sorry, page 217.
217.
It does show the years. So between 2018 and 2020 was the
so
time
2
period.
years. Okay.
Correct.
So that was the time. And then they get reimbursed after they take the courses, not before. So you don't pay tuition in advance.
No.
That is correct.
Okay. And is there, well, never mind. I kind of like the idea of maybe looking at all of these different policies and setting some kind of an annual target, maybe along the lines of Metropolitan Water District, for reimbursement, and not leaving it as an open-ended approach.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any other questions? I'd be happy to answer for the board.
Chairman Deere?
Yes, I have no questions. Anyone else?
I do. After
Who is it?
Director Gray.
Go ahead, Gloria.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'm sorry, Michelle and Director Houston. Here I don't have the papers in front of me. That's why I'm on the phone. So I'm kind of multitasking. But I did hear your report, Michelle, and thank you for doing the research. And I kind of heard that WRD reimburses 100%, but I'd like to know, I really like, and you may have already done this, kind of where we fit into the scheme of every agency's program. It sounds like, we're pretty generous and we have great employees and we want to support them, but we want to be, reasonable in terms of what we're doing. So I think Director Alvarez said, doing research and comparing, I think we need to do that more and get a recommendation in terms of what your findings are from other agencies in terms of not having it open-ended, and what that ceiling would be and what their percentage would be and so forth after looking at all of that information. So I do think our program is generous in terms of leaving it open and leaving it up to the manager to make that decision about approving that, whatever that amount could be, which sounds like it's no ceiling. So those are my comments. I think we need to look at it further, study it further, and make sure we have a fair and reasonable program, not only for the employees, but for the district. Thank you.
That's a good point. I agree with that very much.
Director Deere, I do have a question. It's Houston.
Director Houston, go ahead.
Just real quick, I did notice, Michelle, in the document, I guess page 217, so it really doesn't look, at least from 2016, like many of our employees have taken advantage of this program. Am I accurate here?
That's correct. That would be correct. We do have two new requests on the table, but those have not been reimbursed at this point because they started the coursework, but again, you can't get the reimbursement until you've completed the coursework. So there was no data to provide for those individuals. But outside of these, yes, this has been all we have received in the past 5 years.
Oh, in the last 5 years. Okay, so I guess at the end of the day, look, I think it's a great program. We do have wonderful employees. You've got a lot of different policy and restrictions on how they can apply and how long they need to be here after it's done, or reimbursement, et cetera. And you seem to be very much in agreement with what most of the other water districts are doing. I wholly agree with what already has been said by my colleagues to let's continue, maybe go back and tweak some things. I'm okay right now personally with the 90%. I think that's very generous. I see what the others are doing. I'm very open-minded talking about it, but I also see, for better or worse, not many of our employees are actually using this. And maybe that's something that we should encourage more of. We're really trying to continue to have great employees who stick around, and I think this is a wonderful incentive. Who wouldn't want to have the opportunity to get some higher education and have it mostly paid for by your employer? So anyway, I'm very open to that. And the last thought I had, I'm blanking on what it was, but I just think, the directors made the request to let's look at it deeper. Oh yes, the last thing was, yeah, I do have an issue that the general manager would of course be able to fully authorize this, obviously, because there is authorization limits. So hence, I think it was good that this large outlay came to our attention. So that's one thing I would also look at. It probably should be consistent with our code in general, because obviously we don't want things being authorized that are too expensive, and then later we're understanding how come that happens. So that would be my only other thing to consider in new policy. So thank you.
Very good. Anything else?
Chairman Deere, just so I'm clear on the direction here, I'm hearing that we need to make sure our policy is both fair to employees and to the district and the ratepayers, and to review certain aspects of the policy, including the GM's authority coming into play, as stated in another part of our code, but to make sure it applies here, and perhaps bring back some recommendations more in line with caps for the board to consider, like Metropolitan is one I heard. So we'll get that information. We'll bring it back to the board in the near future, and for more of maybe an action item to be considered at that point.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go to item 6F.
Okay, item 6F, on the final information calendar item, and there is not a write-up from this, which is kind of appropriate since the topic was asked to be put on the agenda by Director Williams, and it was regarding the discussion about the paperless board and committee agenda packets. And so that's why we saved a little bit of paper. There's no write-up, but we did want to have a discussion with the board, with the committee. Director Williams specifically had raised the issue of we courier the committee packets out for each of the 4 committees individually, and then we later courier a compilation really of all of that information into the board packet. And Director Williams had raised the issue that he's already seen all of this with the committee packets, and don't necessarily need to print them sometimes several hundreds of pages and courier that for the board packet itself. It's duplicative. So Director Williams, did I characterize that correctly?
Yeah, you did a pretty good job there, because I'm looking at, I serve on a few other boards, like for the county and of course with Metropolitan, and they have limited printed material that they send to us. So I'm looking at mainly the board agenda, because most of us attend the committee meetings, and we get all of the printed material then. So there really would be no need to send that out again in a compilation of the material. So the electronic copy of the whole thing is sufficient, I believe, and we would save time and money. I know with the county board that I serve on, the boards of appeal, we get no printed material. We get what is it, the iPad, and it has on all of the material, the background and the board material, and that seems to work real well. And I know that it takes a lot of time to print, collate, and send stuff out, mail it out. It would be better if we could just have the for the board meeting, just electronic copy like we get from Metropolitan. I think that would save the district time and money, and I believe our staff would really appreciate that. So it's just put it out there to think about. That's what I wanted to do there. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Director Williams. This is Don Deere. You're also going to save a few thousand trees a year at the rate we use paper. Desi, do you agree that we could send this to the board for consideration?
Well, we could send it.
Yes.
Excuse me. It could stay here in the committee, and we can talk about it more before it goes to the board. You know, whatever.
You want to do it right now? Talk about it more.
Well, I'm just asking. What do you think?
Director Deere, if I could just follow up.
Go ahead, Desi.
What Director Williams had recommended. I agree with Director Williams and actually your comment about killing a lot of trees here. We do receive the packages for all of the committee meetings, and effectively, my understanding is that the board meetings is a reproduction of a lot of that material. So what I would favor is that whatever material we've already received should not be reproduced in terms of the board material. If there is new board material that it was not covered in one of the committee meetings, that would be beneficial to have paper copy off to make notes, etc., then that should be forwarded to us. But otherwise, anything that's already been made available does not need to be reproduced. And with that, I'm going to need to excuse myself. I need to get going, so I'm going to check out. And thank you. It was a very informative meeting today.
Okay, thank you. Let me make a comment, Director Harold. Actually, the discussion is of paperless board packets, because we're not, committee meeting packets are a separate thing, and they're handled in a different way. If we have the committee meeting packets always on paper, then of course can go to the paperless board. But if we don't have committee meeting packets on paper, I don't know what we want to do. What's the feeling of the board?
Well, I just like to say that my main drive here is to have a paperless board agenda, because we have all that information, and the anything that comes later that we need could still come electronically, and if we need to print it out, I think everyone has the ability to print things out, and if not, we should, because we are given
communication allowance.
Yeah, right. So it really shouldn't be a problem for us, but it would really, I think it'd be very helpful for the board and ratepayers, and if you want to get down to it with the paper conservation, that we could do that. I don't see it being a big issue.
How do the rest of my colleagues feel about it?
Sure, Mr. Chair, it's Director Hughes.
Yeah.
This is Director
Scott,
Hughes.
go ahead.
My personal opinion, I just think it should be every director's prerogative. I actually do like getting the hard copy. Obviously, if we were at the office, the hard copy would be there both in committee and for full board. And right now, it just happens to be delivered to our homes. I appreciate when staff consolidates those deliveries. That's excellent. So for me, I don't think it needs to be a policy, but I feel like if a director would like to receive the packet, they should be able to. And if they don't, then so be that. But as far as my request, I mean, I really like having the hard copies so I can go through them, and I prefer to continue keeping them. So that would be for me.
Well, Mr. Chair.
Dr. Williams, Harold?
I'm not suggesting that we get rid of the hard copies. I'm just saying that once we get the hard copies at the committee meetings, why do we need to have hard copies for the board meeting when it's the same material?
Yeah, I understand. That's the point you're making, and I would agree with that point. We should try it out, see how that works.
Right, Director Deere, Director Gray.
Director Gray, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with Director Williams in the sense that I would like to see less paper. We do receive some information during committee, and if we need additional information at it can be sent to us. I really only kind of look at the agenda because we do have presentation. I know we can refer to the document, but if it's online, then we can always go online and do it, and we can always print it out. So I just like the idea of less paper, period. But it's up to the rest of the individually. I think Director Houston said that, but for me, less paper is always better for me. Thank you.
Well, I think if one person wants to have a complete copy, it still means the staff has to go take the time to do the work to make the additional copies. My suggestion is we send it to the board with a recommendation that we try out the so-called paperless board meeting packets for anything that we've already seen in committee, and see how that works.
Sounds
see if Scott can live with it.
So you're suggesting you come back with a staff report on that?
Yeah, if you want a staff report,
okay,
I have no problem with that.
That's fine, yeah. I'm okay.
Okay, we'll do that.
With the advantages and disadvantages.
And we'll put it on paper. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, that's good. Does that close the discussion at this time? Anyone?
Yeah,
If
Chairman.
not,
Chairman,
go ahead.
Just so I'm clear, we'll come back with a board write-up on the going paperless with the board packet itself and not duplicate the committee information that's already gone out with sort of any kind of pros and cons and in the write-up, and let the board make a decision from there. Okay.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
We'll go on now to item 7, closed session. Is there a closed session?
There is no closed session, Chairman.
Our director's comments. We'll start with the committee. Oh, wait, Desi isn't here. President Gray, do you have any comments?
Yes, very brief. Thank you, staff. Thank you, General Manager. Thank you, colleagues. Very good discussion. Great meeting, Don, and thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you. Director Williams, any comments?
Ditto.
Okay, that's good. That was concise. And Director Houston, comments?
Just a great meeting, everybody, and I echo my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. You all did a good job. If there's no further business, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much.